And that it was, I thought we'd be flying on like into Iraq on a small plane, one of those planes that has like 2 rows. This was a full-size plane with like 6 seats per row.
Yeah, it was 737.
Yeah. We should talk about how sort of paranoid we were getting before. Like, we packed very lightly, and I was just like, I didn't know how thoroughly they would search us when we arrived. So, for instance, I took a photo of his big camera and I asked our tour guide, can we bring that? And he was like, no, if you bring a camera like that, you need to apply for a permit, probably get like a journalist permit. So,
and once you hear the big J word, you're like,
yeah, like we don't want to be journalists in Iraq. We're going as tourists. And so we had John like take the giant shotgun mic off his thing. We didn't bring a single external mic because we're thinking like if you're walking around just with a camera, no mic, you could be a tourist taking photos. Once you like attach a shotgun mic, they're like, this guy's filming something.
Yeah, once you have a recording device like this, that's very journalistic to be like pointing it in someone's face and asking questions. So
we brought 0 mics. We're using the internal mic, but I think the audio will be fine for the videos.
I think it'll work too because you do a lot of voiceover and we inject a lot of history and facts that way.
Yes.
And it'll be clean that way. And I think it'll be, and really like I was thrilled to bring this camera because it is a high powered camera. So it was like the best. I think it just adds some production value to your already what you do well with the Osmo, which is a nice little handy cam.
Yeah. So our B-roll is going to be phenomenal.
Thank you.
Shami, 아무도 나.
I was even paranoid to the point where I didn't bring my Kindle because I was like, what if they go through and I have like a weird book in there? I don't know what books are like in the Kindle.
I almost deleted like all my apps on my phone. And then I was like, they just actually go to the cloud and still remain there. So then I would have to like re-download them. So I was like, I don't think I'm going to do that.
And while we were heading to the airport, I realized I have an Adderall prescription. And I realized I had that in my bag. And I mean, Adderall at the end of the day, it's kind of like crystal meth and like
well, you asked me in the cab, you were like, hey, what do you think about this? And I was like, I guess technically that is a controlled narcotic.
Yeah, and we looked up online, like it's illegal to bring Adderall into Japan. So we're like, yeah, there could be some rules with Iraq as well. I Googled and it said you need like a doctor's note. Like it said my name on the bottle, on the prescription, but we just kind of panicked and we were like, I don't want to be accused of like trying to traffic crystal meth in Iraq. So we checked my toiletry kit with that in it at the airport and it didn't have to bring it.
Yeah, that was actually nice that worked out so well and made us feel better. But we were talking with Sam Decker before we left about Brittany Griner and that whole situation. Obviously very different.
Yeah.
You have a prescription, it says your name on it, but it's very difficult to Google like Iraq specific things.
Yes.
And see if there's like a precedent because there's not. There's no precedent really.
Yes.
I think you did find something that said
No, I didn't really. But it was just talking about carrying Adderall in general. There's a lot of countries that would like ask for a note. I've never had a problem, but like it doesn't say. I don't think people in Iraq even know what it is. But like on the bottle, it says like amphetamine, like salts, and I'm like that might raise some red flags. So we took all these precautions. We were freaking out, but when we arrived, it was actually very smooth at the airport. Shout out Bilweekend. They were the tour service we used, and they had a couple guys waiting for us with a sign that had our names on it. And I thought we'd have to fill out this visa application form and maybe wait up to like 1 or 2 hours. But we just handed them the money in cash for the visas. It was around like $80 a pop. And then they left. They came back like 10, 15 minutes later, and they're like, we're good to go. We went through security, and they ushered us right into this like sick VIP taxi, and we headed to our hotel.
Did we go through security on arrival? I don't think we did.
We had to go through
customs.
Yeah, we did put our bags through like an X-ray machine, but no one was even like looking at the machine.
It didn't seem like it seemed like we had two very slick guys who knew English and Arabic, obviously.
They were wearing they were dressed like very fashionable.
Yeah, they were awesome too.
Yeah.
They were just very business, communicated exactly, and they were just like 10 minutes. And it was funny, we were chatting with an Australian guy who heard us talking about...
New Zealander, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry,
yeah.
New Zealander. And he heard us, he was right in front of us. It was so funny, it was like a movie because we were talking about, you had to have like exact change. It was like $79.99 or $77.99. And we were like, maybe if we just give them 80.
Yeah, but at first I didn't even think we had like 20s. And so I thought we would just have to like eat the extra $20 or whatever. But yeah, everyone's like, you need exact change for the visa. I was also worried they're going to be like, oh, you don't have exact change, you can't get a visa.
Yeah,
it's like, dude, just take the extra $20.
Right, we were worried that they wouldn't take more.
Yeah.
So we were talking about this, sitting, waiting for those guys to figure it out. And this New Zealander turned around, he goes, are you shitting me?
Yeah, well, it was also hilarious. He looked like he was, and I think he was Arabic background. So it's like the first person we talked to looked like he was Iraqi, and then he just turns around. He's like, "Are you shitting me? You need fucking exact change." Yeah. And we're like, "Oh shit!
Yeah.
We're not the only tourists here." But I hooked him up with some. I had some change for his 100, so he was all good. And then we drove straight to the hotel. We couldn't see anything really because it was in the middle of the night. Yeah, my first interaction with an Iraqi is we pulled into the hotel lobby and we're just waiting to check in. And I walk outside to smoke a cigarette, take the edge off. And the guy's like, no, why are you going outside? Like, smoke in the lobby. He
insisted.
He insisted that I crank cigarettes in the lobby instead of just smoking right outside the door. But yeah, we got to our room. The room was comfortable enough. And we passed out pretty quickly, maybe around 3 or 4 in the morning. But we had quite the wake up call.
We shared based on price because it wasn't totally.
These trips are pretty expensive right now because they know no American tourists want to come to Iraq alone. They want to feel safe. So the tour guides know they can charge a lot. Also, I think just hotels in general in Iraq are pretty expensive because there's not a huge demand, so they have to charge a lot for the people who do use them to even operate.
Yeah, and I was okay with it too because it's like, whatever, this is a really unique experience. We'll just pack it in together, and it's probably even safer to be like in communication the whole time.
I was happy we were both in the same room. Right at 7 a.m. in the morning, just this crazy loud drilling started. And that's just not only an Iraq thing. Like in China, it happens. In Venice, where I'm at now, it happens. Like whenever I leave the U.S., people are constantly just drilling concrete walls. And it makes the loudest, most annoying sound. I don't know what it is, because in the U.S., I rarely hear that sound. I don't know if I've ever heard that song. But every time I travel, someone's drilling a fucking wall early in the morning. A wall like this. I don't fully understand, but it started exactly at 7 a.m. It went until 9 a.m. So we didn't get a lot of sleep. And I was thinking about going down to complain. I was like, no, I don't want to start off this trip on a negative note. So we just went down, grabbed some breakfast, and then met up with our tour guide for our first tour. before coming, I was like, I'm not interested in museums and stuff as much. I'm more interested in just seeing what daily life is like in Iraq. So our tour guide was great. He's like, how about we go to this big watch party for the game tonight at the stadium? And I was like, that sounds perfect.
Yeah, and he spoke very good English and obviously spoke very good Arabic because he's from Baghdad.
Yes.
And but I guess there was a slight miscommunication because we were jacked up. We were like, oh wow, we're gonna go to the game tonight. But it wound up being amazing either way. But
yeah, we were. We'll talk about it. But
yeah.
we were like, sweet, tonight we're going to see a live football match.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ahmed, he had a good sense of humor. He didn't take himself like too seriously. But the first tour he was going to take us on was a tour of like Old Baghdad, which is like a large district of the city, and all of the markets which are there. But first things first, we had to exchange money. Not a single place in Iraq takes cards, like not even at the airport, not even at their fancier restaurants. I just think it's like a card-free country.
I don't know if it's because they don't want to pay the exchange rates or what. That was my theory.
Or if like the system's down, I couldn't tell either.
Yeah.
So first things first, Ahmed took us to exchange money, and our first experience of Iraq was just crossing the street, which is that's an ordeal in itself. They don't really have crosswalks.
None.
Yes, maybe I saw one
Maybe
whole time I was there.
15 minutes apart too. It's not a highway.
Yeah, it'll be like you'll go on Google Maps and you'll be like, I want to go to this place across the street, and it'll be like, that's going to be a 15-minute walk. So we'll have you walk 10 minutes down there to a crosswalk. So no one in Iraq actually uses crosswalks.
No.
You just gotta kind of play Frogger, or like throw out the stiff arm and be like, stop, I'm walking, and just hope the car stops.
Yeah, Ahmed was very experienced in this regard. He was big on the stiff arm.
Yeah.
He just put it out there in like the middle of the street. And it's not a highway, but they're not driving
could
slow.
be. I mean, it's like 3 lanes like on each like side of the road. So it feels like a highway. And this was like fucking at 8 in the morning. The first thing we did, we crossed the street to go to a money exchange place. That was closed. We crossed the street again. That place was closed. We crossed the street again. And it was just an assault on the senses, like so early, first experience in Iraq, and we're just running back and forth across like a highway. This place is packed. The market district, which was wild. Like, we had been to the Grand Bazaar here in Turkey, which they call the largest shopping mall in the world.
Oldest too, right?
Yeah, that's what they call the Grand Bazaar here. But I feel like the markets in Baghdad were like a whole nother level of craziness.
Absolutely. I mean, I think people really, like, the image I had in my head of Baghdad and Iraq in general was smaller. For some reason, I even looked it up and I was like,
it's a big city.
It's not only the big city, like area-wise, population-wise, but it feels big when you're there too. So I feel safer in big cities like that. I like, you're kind of a fly. Like, yes, you're gonna get attention because of the situation we're in, but frankly, walking, like, I thought there was maybe like one open air market. No, there's like tons, like street after street after street after street after street of different items and different like things.
Most of the whole old Baghdad district of the city was just a giant market. All these things out on the street, people selling them. We saw literally everything you can think of.
Everything from like pomegranate juice to like a pool.
Out of ground pools they were selling,
amazing artifacts in like the antique district from centuries ago, or allegedly, like some of them you kind of like look through like an amazing what do you call it, like a yard sale where you could find some real gems.
Yes.
And you bought like a book. But just, and then there's also like refrigerators, like people actually buying everyday items that they need.
Yep. Electrical equipment, like fuse boxes. I honestly can't think of a single thing that you couldn't find there. You could find booze. I know that a lot of the Middle East is dry, but Baghdad is the easiest place to find booze in the whole country. And especially, I think we were probably staying in like where a lot of the foreigners stay. So there are a lot of the like more modern Iraq or less conservative Iraqis live, because it felt like there was a booze shop every block.
Yeah, and the best way I can describe it was like, and I said this to you, I was like, this is like if you took everything on Amazon, everything on eBay, and just put it into a practical street. Like everything just thrown out onto the street.
Yes.
For sure, some organization. Like they did sort of divvy it up by like, oh, we're in the like Afghan rug area, and it was like fabrics and like all of that, and like I said, the antiques. But it was just so overwhelming.
Yeah, dude, we had fucking horses walking by because I guess they like use horses to bring shit from the warehouse to the markets. So you would have a traffic jam with just like a bus, a truck, a car, and then a horse just like trying to get through. With a couple people, like there was a wagon on the back of the horse stacked with boxes, and a couple people sitting at the top of the boxes. And this was still like 9 a.m, our first day in Iraq, and like, god damn it, I was loving it. I was just like so tired at the time, so I kept on pounding tea, and I was like, I think I need something a little stronger. So then we went and got some coffee because you want to be like alert when you're in a place like that.
Yeah.
Also, every market stand had a megaphone on it where you could do a pre-recorded message on the megaphone and then just set it to repeat. So, and they were all right next to each other competing, and it's just like, wild, but it was definitely cool to see.
Yeah. And you're right. I don't know what they were saying, but I imagine it was something like, scarves, $9.99, scarves, $9.99.
Scarves, $9.99. 20% off. Buy one, get one free. Buy one, get one free. Buy one, get one free scarf. Buy one, get one free scarf. Buy one, get one free. Buy one, get one free scarf. And it was just like, yeah, all these different bird calls. Oh, they even had a pet market. We should talk about that.
Let's double back just because. So we were overwhelmed already. Much like Turkey, Iraq is a big coffee town, a big tea town. So that was nice. Once again, they love it. They also love tobacco. A lot of similarities, actually. Those three things, real big in both countries. Tobacco, smoking cigarettes. You love that, of course, because
but I was even shocked because China's also known for loving cigs, and I'm pretty sure both Turkey and Iraq have China beat. Like, because people are smoking even more often.
Yeah.
And like most of the time, you walk into like a 7-Eleven, people are smoking. We saw people smoking at the airport, like people that were like working at customs.
Yeah. Actually, you're right.
There was
he was like smoking a cigarette,
stamping passports, like everyone. It doesn't matter where you are, if you're driving a boat, fucking rich, poor. I didn't see any like young kids smoking cigs, which was good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So the first place Ahmed took us after we exchanged money, and right before, I think it was actually before we got breakfast, he took us to, I'm not going to remember the name, so if you do throw it out there, it was basically this square that had a kind of this, what looked like a rather new memorial, if you will. Like this left to right rectangle that was pretty large.
I think the memorial had been there for a while.
Okay. Yeah. But he explained, and it was kind of a wild thing to do at first because we had like no context really for this, and now we've looked it up and kind of understand it a little bit more. But he was like, in 2019, like 600 people died here.
Yeah, and there were protests in that square that I think went on for months and months.
Yeah, so a little bit of history was like, obviously they defeated ISIS in like 2017, I want to say, was when that was declared like out of Iraq for the most part, and mostly in Syria. And I believe the sentiment is like, obviously the Iraqi security forces are heavy on security now because they pushed all of that out of Baghdad, and that's why there's all these heavy security forces.
Yeah.
And in 2019, I believe, like this protest occurred because they tried to get rid of, I think the current regime tried to suppress social media, tried to.
Oh yeah.
I believe, and this was what caused some of the protests.
Yeah, I do know true? It was just like Iraqi people who wanted a new president. They wanted to get the current guy out.
Right, and I believe they do have this temporary guy now who. I think the sentiment was very hopeful, and we'll talk more about this. But like, I think Ahmed took us there to kind of explain, like, this is where we are now. Like, we had this happen in 2019, and this was a heavily guarded. There was police. It was actually wild to go there first because we were just surrounded by police.
Yes,
and they are not. They kind of permanently wear riot gear. They look
giant
like
guns.
They look like they're gonna wear. They look like they're gonna play street hockey.
Yes.
They have like leggings on. They have like arm pads on and helmets. So it was intense. I was like pulling out my camera, like, okay, here's the first test on. But everybody,
they didn't seem to mind us filming.
No, not at all.
And the reason the protests were there is because it was right across from the green zone. The green zone's where all the government buildings are.
U.S. Embassy.
Yeah, all of the embassies. I'm sure it's where the U.S. military was headquartered when they were in Iraq.
Yeah, and you can't. We learned that you can't just walk in there.
No, you're allowed to drive through it after you go through a security checkpoint, but you're not allowed to get out of the car unless you have special permission.
Or a reason to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I didn't know that much about the protests. Like when you're living in the U.S., it was just like a blip. I'm sure I saw an article about it. Yeah. And that's probably why the last thing I'd really heard about Iraq were these crazy protests in 2019. So when I started hearing you can travel there now, I was like, oh, damn, like it's safe enough?
Right. And, and that's what I mean, where things have changed, where like the current temporary president, I believe, has some support, and it's because they really want to be free from Iranian influence, and they're going to struggle with that, obviously. And they're in the middle of that and trying to figure that out. But in the meantime...
Because like Iran doesn't want Iraq to have any American influence.
Right.
And so there's kind of a competing where they're like, Iran wants to have influence, and then some people want to like align themselves more with the West, as opposed to Iran.
I think Iran just views it too as like, if we're not involved, then that means it's going to be West. And I don't know if that's really fair. They kind of bully around Iraq, in my opinion, because they shot missiles that we talked about it on the last podcast. That like a week before we went, they shot missiles into the northern part of Iraq, and I think they just did it as a show of force. Like, fuck you guys, we're going to do whatever we want.
And it also comes down to Shia and Sunni. I shouldn't get this wrong. Do you know which one Iran is?
No, not off the top of my head.
You know what? I think Turkey is Sunni, so I think Iran would be Shia, and Iraq has a mix.
Yes.
So it's also Iran wants to have the government dominated by Sunni Muslims.
Correct.
I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but yeah.
You're right, though, that Iraq
Saudi Arabia is all Sunni, Iran is almost like all Shia, but Iraq's a mix of both, and that can lead to conflict.
Right, and I think Iraq has actually set it up at the moment where, remember, if people forget too, this isn't Afghanistan. The Taliban is Afghanistan.
Yes.
Iraq was Saddam Hussein. Once he was removed, they've had different American-influenced regimes.
Yes.
Of course, and now they're at this point where they have a temporary government that has a mix of all three.
Yeah.
Pretty much an interesting way to do it, to try and align everybody.
Yeah.
So they're at this very hopeful moment of being like, can we, and they were trying to have these elections to get this temporary guy more permanent. So, and they've struggled with that. So I'm hopeful to say, it was a very interesting time to be in Iraq, because obviously when they changed the visa in 2021, that was a big change. And they are embracing this idea that it's a new day, we want tourism, and I gotta tell you, we'll talk even more about this. The people embraced it. I mean, they probably had, I think, something, rough numbers, 30,000 visitors in 2020 before this, when it was difficult to get a visa, 100,000 in 2021 to 2022. So it's still new for people in Iraq to see people like us, and we felt that. But they were just unbelievably accommodating and nice and friendly.
And very happy and proud to see that we wanted to come to their country.
Yes.
So everyone's no one was like, why'd you come here? They're all like, oh, thank you so much for coming to our country. You're welcome here.
It seemed hopeful.
How do you like it? Yeah.
If they're here, it must be a new day.
Yes. Yeah. It makes them feel very good about their country to see oh, wow, we have people from America and Europe just coming to explore now.
I also think with younger people, if you're, thank you, sir. Okay, they love Turkey, loves tea, and he just brought us some tea. Thank you so much. The younger people that we see and meet in Iraq, they're so influenced by Instagram. They're so influenced by YouTube.
Snapchat too.
Yeah.
That's big there.
So, and that's what I mean by there's a distinction between this and Afghanistan, where I don't think they've had the same restrictions on social media. So that's what caused some of this, they're already exposed, especially if you're younger and you're a little bit more savvy to that. So it was just amazing to see that they were so into Instagram, and they were asking all of us, what's your IG, what's your IG, what's your IG?
And when they heard I was a YouTuber, what's your YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
At first I was should I even tell people I'm a YouTuber? Because maybe that makes me seem like a journalist, but no, everybody wanted to know your YouTube page. And like I'll look at the comments from like some of the other YouTube vids that have been filmed in Iraq, and a lot of them are from Iraqi people being like, "This is so cool!" Like, I love like seeing my country showcased in these vids.
Yeah, definitely. So let's double back and talk with Ahmed. He took us to this square and explained some of the history, and then we got our first breakfast in Iraq. And he took us, to be honest, we were walking through rather fast, and it was so overwhelming, and I wanted to stop and shoot all these things. And he was like, "Don't worry about it, we'll get to this, let's just go to breakfast." But he took us to, it was an amazing place, we'll get to like what we ate, but it was like into the back, past all these people, sitting down next to a guy that was already sitting there, and everyone just kind of turns and looks. Like, that's the first time where I felt like, okay, we're just gonna have a little bit of an audience here.
Yeah.
Did you feel that way?
I felt like we would get, so there's so much going on in Baghdad that most people don't even have the time like to notice us. But when everyone's like sitting down for a meal, they're gonna be like, "Huh, first white guy I've seen here."
Yeah, and I walked in with a camera, and it was just an open air thing, and it was such a busy restaurant.
Yeah, everyone was just grabbing a quick bite and getting back to work.
It was like a diner.
It was my second favorite meal of the whole trip. We'll get to my favorite meal later, but it was sort of like Iraqi pancakes or Iraqi French toast. This type of like light, crispy bread that's fried, and then there was like a sweet cream on it, which was kind of like whipped cream, and then they had honey and crushed up pistachio. And like, I'm not lying, like if they served that in the U.S., I would order it over pancakes a lot of the time. It was that good. That was our first meal, so we were off to a good start.
Yeah, it was delicious. And per Iraqi tradition, you eat with your hands. So you kind of like rip off a piece of this like crepe-like flaky pastry, dip it in the cream. And I don't know what these like seasoning that they put on it. Do you know what that was?
It was like, those were crushed up pistachios.
Oh, wow, because that was delicious.
Yeah.
And it was heavy, but it was like nice and light pistachio, and so you kind of dip it all
with
together.
the sweet cream.
Yeah, and like a syrupy taste, and it was like you said, Iraqi pancakes. And then and they were so cool about it. Like I got up with my camera because they had such an assembly line of how they were doing this. They had like this big vat of like the cream, and then they had these big sheets of the like pastry, if you will, that they would like hand off to the other guy. He'd like whip up the cream and like pour it out. It was chaos, and I got to go back there with my camera and get some pretty cool footage. So it was a good start.
It was a great start. We've already touched on the markets a bit because afterwards we kind of just walked through all of them for like a couple hours. But one thing we didn't mention was they have a pets market. So just like probably 50 different types of birds.
Hundreds
of birds, cats and dogs, and then
it was so overwhelming that some people will feel that a certain way about it for sure.
Yes,
it was a little tough in the moment to feel that way about it because we were so overwhelmed. So it was a little bit more of let's just take this in. This is the way it is.
Yeah.
The thing that shocked me at one point was I walked by what I thought were puppies.
Yeah,
like
same
dogs.
Here.
And I don't know if there was something lost in translation because he pointed and he said, "No, that's a baby wolf."
He didn't. He goes, "Not a dog." And so then I was just like, "Okay, so what could it be? Is it a dingo? No. Is it a fox? No. Is it a wolf? Yeah. It's a wolf."
It was so adorable and just the cutest thing.
Baby wolf. Yeah, they was being sold for around 2,000 USD. So probably one of the most expensive things at the market.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I would have bought a wolf for $2,000, but
if you could bring it back to the U.S.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know if you just raise a wolf. If a human raises a wolf when it's young, does it just kind of like sort of start to act like a dog, or will it still have like wild tendencies and it might fuck you up later in life?
I think there's always that risk. I think you can train a wolf because there's some similarities, but I do think you run the risk of it's a wolf.
Yeah.
The teeth, and actually what I looked at when I was taking footage, I think you can see it in the teeth. That's where like I'll look back at it, but the baby wolf had some pinches.
Huskies and wolves, like I couldn't really tell the difference.
No.
It's like the only way I know is that you see a husky walking with a human. You see a wolf just alone in the woods.
Yeah. So that was the most exotic thing. They also had these big, everywhere they had these big vats of like, these big like tubs of water with just fish.
Yes.
Just like sitting, the live fish just kind of flopping around.
Yeah, and they have something that pumps bubbles into the water, so there's enough like oxygen in it, and the fish won't die, so you can buy fresh fish.
Yeah.
And I guess it is fresh fish because Baghdad's right on the Tigris River, the Tigris and Euphrates. That's where the first human civilizations sprung up. And all the fish we saw was caught in that river.
Yeah, I don't know what they're called. Do you remember what, carp of some sort?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a white, I believe they're white, like flaky fish.
Yeah.
That you can season and grill and do kind of cook with, kind of similar to the way we like in America.
Yes.
And it's a very universal thing, is a white fish that's seasoned and grilled or cooked in different ways.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think about, what else did you see in the markets? That was probably the most exotic thing we saw. The birds were unbelievable.
Yeah. I got to buy some old Saddam Hussein banknotes, so it was the currency they used before 2003.
Yeah, you're right. The antique district was fascinating. I'm glad he actually took us there because that was later in the day. Because we tried to go to like the famous Wisdom.
School of Wisdom, yeah.
If you look up Iraq, that always pops up as like the School of Wisdom. Very historic.
Yeah, so seeing this is kind of a history podcast, we should throw in, like, Baghdad has a lot of history because it was the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, which was kind of like, so it was the center of the Muslim world for a while. The Abbasid Caliphate controlled a lot of the Middle East, starting from around the year like 800 AD for maybe, I'm not even going to try to guess, maybe they were in power. They were in power for hundreds of years up until Genghis Khan came in. Actually, it was Genghis Khan's son sacked Baghdad. And a lot of people claim that Baghdad still hasn't recovered from the sack by Genghis Khan in like the year 1300, which is crazy to think about because they burned a lot of like the libraries, but some monuments did survive. And a lot of people say the entire Muslim world hasn't recovered from what Genghis Khan did to them in like the 1300s, which is just mind-blowing to think about. But yeah, there are some places left over. There's like a very famous school left over, which is still, I don't know if it's still in operation today.
Oh, the one that we saw?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the oldest school in Iraq. They said, what, like 1280, I want to say?
Yeah, I think it's, maybe even earlier.
Right.
Because it was used during the Abbasid Caliphate, which started around like 800.
Impressive building, too.
Yeah. Baghdad was like kind of a center for the arts and sciences for a while it was the capital. And I think there was a beautiful library. That was completely destroyed. But the School of Wisdom is where all these ancient philosophers and scientists and researchers would kind of do all of their research.
Yeah, and Ahmed, who was it seemed like a very educated guy himself. There is like this youth in Iraq that is relatively educated. I don't know how number they are or if they're elite or not, but they know their stuff. Yeah. Ahmed really knew his stuff, and he could really contextualize for us where we were and what we were doing. And
yeah, like if you were hanging out with Ahmed, who has lived his whole life in Baghdad, if you were hanging out with him back in the U.S., like, you know, you wouldn't think anything of it. Like, he could be one of your American buddies.
Yeah, and we said that to him. We were like, yo, you got to come to New York. We'll show you around.
Yeah, which is tough because now with the Iraqi visa, you can only go to like a few countries. I think it's tough. We also got to see this very famous cafe. I'm not sure if it's like famous for a sad reason, but there was a car bomb that blew up right outside of it in 2007. And so they have giant portraits of the people who died in that attack inside the cafe. But it was a very lively place. You had a bunch of people smoking hookah, drinking Iraqi coffee, which is very strong. So they drink it in like almost like a shot glass. Sort of like Iraqi espresso, but it was even stronger than espresso, I'd say.
It was.
And it had a little bit of a licorice taste. They put some sort of nut in there, which like flavors it.
Yeah, and I mean, Turkish coffee is known for being strong, but you're right. This had a different spin to it, a different taste.
Yeah. And it seems like, because bars aren't as common there, just these like hookah lounges are more what people do to go in, relax with friends, and shoot the shit.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this was. It had a great vibe. It was called the Mutanabi Baghdad Cafe.
Yeah, you got a great shot of the owner. That guy was majestic looking.
Yeah, he just kind of sits. He's got this like desk near the entrance, and he just kind of sits at and hangs out. Obviously drinks coffee and tea, but he was like reading the paper, just like having a day. Didn't really give a shit about me. Taking pictures of him, taking videos.
Yes.
He's very common, I think, because you do like these tours make a point to take you through here, so people come through there.
That was also great that the Iraqi people didn't mind being on camera.
Not at all.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've traveled to some countries, and you got to be very careful where you point that camera. Oh, the Iraqi women don't like being on camera. So in Turkey, you don't see as many women fully covered up. That's a lot more commonplace in Iraq, and you're not supposed to film them. And one time I was just trying to film the horse in the middle of the road, and a woman walked by, and she gave me a very bad look because she thought I was filming her. After the markets, we got to go for a little boat cruise on the Tigris. I felt like that was because we saw like Iraqi tourists too. Like, I don't know if they were from Baghdad or something, but that was like a very touristy thing for Iraqi tourists as well. They had this one giant boat that would play loud music, and everybody would like, buy a ticket, and it would just go for like a long lap around the river.
Well, booze cruise with no booze.
Booze cruise with no booze. I think they had tea and a DJ though. So you could still have a little fun. We went on a smaller boat with this dude. He looked like Coach O. He looked like Iraqi Coach O. Chain smoked the entire time. We went for like a 10-minute cruise. He was smoking cigs the entire time.
You took a picture of him and wound up teasing that post. Like, where am I? What body
I
of water
posted
is
that.
this?
Yeah. And yeah, the Tigris, it's probably not the most scenic river, but it was cool to kind of see the city from that vantage point. Before we left, we were like, should we tell people we're Canadian? Just because of like U.S.'s history in Baghdad. Although was Canada involved in the Iraq War too? I have no idea. I'm sure they sent some troops.
I believe so because they're allies of us, but I don't think.
We were like, should we say that we're from Finland? And it's like, they're gonna know we're not from Finland. Like,